She was sold to the world as a dream. The perfect girl, perfect hits, perfect choreography, perfect life. Britney Spears didn't just become famous. She became a global template for what pop stardom was supposed to look like. And that's where the trap begins. When millions fall in love with an image, the real person behind it starts to disappear. Because fame isn't only applause. It's ownership. It's a machine that decides what you are, what you mean, and what parts of you are allowed to exist in public. With Britney, the fairy tale moved so fast that most fans didn't notice what she was losing in real time: control over her own narrative. The early years looked shiny on the surface: chart-topping singles, sold-out tours, endless TV appearances. But behind the perfection was a schedule that never loosened, an industry that rewards constant output, and a media ecosystem that treats vulnerability like entertainment. In that world, you're not just a person with talent. You're a brand with a deadline. And once you become an empire, everyone wants a piece of it. Labels, managers, broadcasters, sponsors, paparazzi, even strangers who feel entitled to your life. The more successful you are, the less privacy you're allowed to have. This isn't a story about a pop star who messed up. It's about what happens when a human being is asked to perform perfection forever, and what the system does when the performer finally cracks. Because the question isn't how Britney became a phenomenon. The question is, when did the phenomenon stop being hers? At the height of her rise, Britney's image was everywhere. Songs engineered for maximum replay, videos built for maximum attention, interviews shaped into sound bites. The brand was clean, bright, and endlessly repeatable. The person inside the brand had to keep up. Success came early, and early success is brutal. You grow up in public while the world debates your choices like they're plot points. Every relationship becomes a headline. Every mistake becomes a moral lesson. Every sign of exhaustion is treated as weakness instead of warning. The pressure didn't come only from the stage. It came from the industrial cycle that demands constant productivity. New music, new tours, new appearances, because silence is treated like danger. And around Britney, silence was never allowed. Cameras followed her outside studios, outside restaurants, outside her own home. The message was clear. Access wasn't a privilege anymore. It was an expectation. As the years passed, the coverage shifted. The same media that celebrated her began to circle her. Private stress turned into public spectacle. And instead of stepping back, the machine pushed forward because the brand could not pause, even if the person needed to. By the mid-2000s, the cracks were no longer subtle. They were visible, widely reported, replayed, and monetized, until the story reached a breaking point the world watched in real time. When Britney's exhaustion and distress became public, it wasn't treated like a health emergency. It was treated like a show. Tabloids and TV panels turned real pain into weekly entertainment, and paparazzi followed her like a business plan. In that environment, there's no room to recover, only room to react. The most infamous moments weren't just bad decisions. They were signals of someone under extreme pressure with no safe exit. And each headline tightened the cage. The more she struggled, the more the world stared. The more the world stared, the harder it became to breathe without being judged. Then came a shift that changed her life for more than a decade. In 2008, after a highly publicized period of crisis, a court-ordered conservatorship was put in place, widely reported as a way to stabilize and protect. To the public, it sounded like organization. To many watching closely, it raised a different question. How does a person lose control over their own body, money, and decisions, yet remain productive enough to keep working? Because the machine didn't stop. Albums happened. Performances happened. Las Vegas happened. If the brand was functioning, the system treated that as proof it was working. But the deeper story was about control. Who makes the choices? Who signs the contracts? Who benefits from the output? And once a life is managed like a corporation, freedom starts to look like a liability. Under a conservatorship, the logic becomes corporate: reduce risk, protect assets, maintain the product. In Britney's case, reporting over the years described layers of control: legal authority, financial oversight, career decisions shaped by others. The central fear wasn't only public judgment anymore. It was being managed like a brand instead of treated like a human being. That's the dark side of power in celebrity culture. Structures that claim to protect can also imprison. When fame and money collide with family dynamics, business interests, and legal control, the person at the center can become the smallest voice in the room. For a long time, many people accepted the official storyline because it was presented as responsibility. But small details kept bothering fans. The contradictions, the scripted messaging, the sense that something was off. And in the age of social media, the audience wasn't just watching. They were comparing timelines, tracking court filings, noticing patterns. What changed this story wasn't a comeback to her. It was a shift in collective perception. People who once consumed the spectacle started questioning the system behind it. The conversation moved from celebrity drama to autonomy, mental health, and exploitation under relentless surveillance. And when enough people stop laughing, stop scrolling, and start asking who's in control, the spotlight turns from the star to the machinery around her. The hashtag #FreeBritney movement didn't begin as a marketing campaign. It grew like an investigation. Fans turning into archivists, piecing together public records and inconsistencies, pushing questions into mainstream news. What used to be dismissed as conspiracies slowly became a topic major outlets had to address. Then came the moment that made it impossible to ignore. In 2021, Britney spoke directly to the court, describing her experience in her own words, statements widely reported across the world. Regardless of where someone stood before, hearing her speak reframed the entire story, not as a wild celebrity saga, but as a prolonged fight over consent and control. Soon after, the legal structure began to change. The conservatorship that had defined her adult life for years ended later in 2021, marking a historic turning point. But the end of a legal arrangement isn't the end of the damage. When someone spends years being managed, rebuilding a self is harder than rebuilding a career. And that's the uncomfortable lesson. The system can keep the brand functional while the person deteriorates. It can fix public optics without fixing what's breaking inside. Which leads to the question that lingers long after the headlines fade. Britney Spears' story isn't just about fame. It's about what fame attracts: control, contracts, narratives written by committees, and a public that mistakes visibility for permission. She was marketed as perfection, then punished for being human. And when the person behind the image struggled, the system tried to repair the brand first. The moral is simple and unsettling. In celebrity culture, success can become a golden cage. The more profitable the image, the more dangerous the real person becomes to the business built around them. That's why autonomy matters as much as talent. Because without autonomy, even an empire can feel like a prison. Now I want to hear from you. At what point do you think fame stops being a dream and becomes a trap? Drop your take in the comments. And if this story made you think differently about how we consume celebrity breakdowns, share this video. Someone else might need that perspective. Subscribe for more documentaries about the hidden side of fame, the systems behind the spotlight, the power dynamics no one advertises, and the human cost of being iconic. Next episode, we'll look at another star whose smile sold a fantasy, while their real life was being negotiated behind closed doors.